Hey everyone, welcome back to Traverse Talks. I'm going to bump up our usual Friday wrap up a day earlier this week. Tuesday's primary election was just too big a story to sit on. So today we're going deep on the numbers from Tuesday's primary, plus two local stories out of Traverse City you need to know about. Hey, so let's get into it. Let's start with Tuesday's primary because this one had national eyes on it, and our own backyard race was closer than a lot of people expected. The marquee statewide race, Michigan's open U.S. Senate seat, Abdul El Sayed edged out U.S. Representative Haley Stevens for the Democratic nomination. On election night tallies, El Sayed pulled in 735,625 votes, to Stevens, 716,222 votes. That's just under 51% to just over 49%. That's a margin of roughly 19,400 votes out of nearly about 1.5 million cast. It was too close to call overnight, but NBC News and the Associated Press projected Al Sayed the winner Wednesday morning. Stevens had more than $30 million in outside spending behind her, much of it from AIPAC-aligned groups, so this is being framed nationally as a real progressive upset. Al Sayed will face former Congressman Mike Rogers, who ran unopposed on the Republican side in November. I think an interesting thing about that Senate race was before the voting results started to come in, or really before Tuesday, the polls showed El Sayed up about 15 points, and he finishes the race just about a point ahead. I guess I'm thinking, what does that say about polling these days? Anyway, just a thought. Now let's talk about our own congressional seat, because this is the race I know you've all been watching. On the Democratic side, Traverse City attorney Callie Barr won the nomination outright, and it wasn't particularly close. Barr pulled in 62,091 votes, and that's 58.5% of the Democratic vote in the district. Kyle Blomquist, the Iron Mountain mayor pro tem, who ran as a Democratic socialist, finished with 37,998 votes, or about 35.7%. And Wayne Stiles, the Traverse City industrial engineer, came in third with 6,226 votes, and that's about 5.9%. So Barr more than doubled Blomquist's vote share and outpaced him by roughly 24,000 votes district-wide in a primary that covers the entire Upper Peninsula plus a wide swath of northern Lower Peninsula. It's one of the largest congressional districts in the country by geography. And that's a decisive first ballot win for Barr, who now sets up a rematch with incumbent Republican Jack Bergman in November, just like their 2024 race. I might add on the on the Barr-Blomquist race, Blomquist really only won one county, and I believe that was Dickinson County. So that was a pretty big haul for Barr. On the Republican side, Bergman had no trouble at all. He took in 80,607 votes, or about 74%, against Matthew Dent Otter's 14,248, which is about 13%, and Justin Michaels' 13,616. That's about 12.5%. So Bergman heads into November with a commanding primary win and a well-funded incumbency behind him against a Barr campaign that also won convincingly, just with a smaller overall vote pool. That's the matchup for M1, Bergman versus Barr, round 2. And closer to home, the state Senate race that covers Grand Traverse, Leelanau, Antrim, and several other counties, District 37. Incumbent Republican John DeMoose ran unopposed. On the Democratic side, Kate Gallup of Cedar beat out Traverse City Commissioner Mitch Treadwell for the nomination. So that race in November is DeMoose versus Gallup. And a few more for the record. In the governor's race, Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson dominated the Democratic primary, taking 1,208,832 votes. That's about 83%. To Chris Swanson's 247,165. On the Republican side, Congressman John James, endorsed by President Trump, beat Perry Johnson 459,434 to 323,630. And that's roughly 59 to 41%. So Benson and James face off for governor in November and down in the State House. Both of our local seats, District 103, Betsy Kofia's seat, and District 104, John Roth's seat, had no primary contests at all. Both incumbents and their fall opponents walked onto the November ballot unopposed. Anyway, bottom line, Barr's win in the M1 was the most decisive local result of the night. El Said's win is the one with national implications, and we now know every matchup on the ballot this November. And a couple of local stories to help us wrap this Thursday weekly wrap-up. Oh, let's see. First, we've got Traverse City's planning director is out, and City Hall still hasn't said why. Sean Renter was fired by City Manager Ben Marentet just days after Winter returned from an extended family medical leave. Nearly 6 years on the job and no public cause given. Marentet says there's documentation of performance going back to last August, but he's citing legal reasons for not saying more. The Planning Commission chair says her own board was blindsided and still doesn't have an explanation. Now, this is a transparency question for a city department that shapes nearly everything about how Traverse City grows. But I will say, when you get into these, having done these a lot for years myself, when you get into these HR situations, it's better really not to expose much of anything as to why the person was let go. Hey, second, up on the local stories, some good infrastructure news. The Beitner Bridge, closed since April's historic flooding, is now officially under construction. MDOT awarded a $3.7 million contract. Equipment started moving the week of August 3rd, and activity work begins around August 10th. The target is to have it reopened before the end of the year, and that's roughly a year ahead of the original 2027 timeline. That's good news for anyone that uses that crossing. Hey, folks, that's your Northern Michigan wrap for this week. A little early, but a big week called for it. Every November matchup is set. Barr heads into the fall with a decisive win behind her, and the City Hall has some explaining, if they want to, about losing their planning director. Hey, this has been Traverse Talks. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next time.